Soviet Navy had the ability to challenge the US and NATO at sea. However, today, Russia's Navy seems to be little more than a liability for them, and more just targets for Ukraine to try to hit. So, what is their Navy doing? And what capabilities do they even have left? But first, real quick, our sponsor, Factor 75. It's from the same company that brought you HelloFresh. And honestly, I love HelloFresh, and my wife and I still order them and cook them all the time, but I hate cooking. And that's where Factor 75 comes in. There's no mess with them. No dishes, no cooking, no preparation, just a few minutes in the microwave or a couple more in the oven gives you a full, delicious meal. So if you're like me, do yourself a favor. Skip the dishes and give Factor 75 a try. It's perfect, again, if you don't like cooking like me, or find it hard to go grocery shopping and planning out every meal you have, or it's perfect just to have around for a quick, nutritious meal when you're busy, or on the go, or you just want a fast meal. And that's the great part about it. It's extremely flexible, with dozens of meal choices, including things for vegans, keto, calorie smart, and more. And as you can see, they have a huge choice of meals to choose from. Use my link or go to go.factor75.com and use code POGCOVERTNOV50 for 50% off your first box. Click the link in the description, or you can just scan the QR code here with your phone. The Soviet Navy was more of a defensive navy. Now, this is a bit of a generalization, but the US Navy, with its aircraft carriers, focused more on being able to attack land targets, whereas the Soviets could really only afford a navy to try to stop those US aircraft carriers. And this is why we see a lot of Soviet ships carrying huge anti-ship missiles, and lots of them. Even their aircraft carrier carried massive 7-ton anti-ship missiles. And Russia's Navy today, when talking about large surface ships, is mostly all just leftover Soviet-era warships. They have not built a single new design of any carrier, cruiser, or even destroyer themselves. Everything is of Soviet design. The largest new class of warships they've built, the Admiral Gorshkov frigates, are really not that much larger than the US littoral combat ships. So, when it comes to the war in Ukraine, these older ships, built to take on the US Navy at sea, really aren't that much of a value since Ukraine really doesn't have a navy. And the new ships that they have built that are capable of carrying land attack cruise missiles, like Caliber, are much smaller, and therefore they cannot carry as many of them. Which brings up the most interesting fleet that Russia has right now, the Black Sea Fleet. The Black Sea Fleet is currently pretty much limited to what they have there right now. Due to the Montreux Convention and Turkey enforcing it, they cannot bring in any new warships into the Black Sea. One exception is that if a Russian ship had its registered home port in the Black Sea, it could return, and Russia in the past has been accused of trying to change the registered ports of ships to try to get them into the Black Sea, but for now, Russia is basically stuck with what they have there. And as of right now, that is 2 old Soviet frigates, as well as 2 newer Admiral Grigorovich class frigates that can carry 8 caliber missiles each. Also, 6 kilo and improved kilo class submarines, capable of carrying 4 caliber missiles each. There was actually a 7th, but it was in the Mediterranean Sea and unable to return due to that Montreux Convention. Also, one of those 6 was struck lightly by a Ukrainian Storm Shadow cruise missile while in dry dock and is probably a complete loss. If not, at very least it'll be out of service for a long time. On top of that, they have a number of smaller corvettes and other small ships, including 3 of which that can carry 8 caliber missiles each. 2 Bunyan Ms, and a Karakurt-class corvette. They're also currently building or conducting sea trials on 5 more Karakut-class ships that will be in the Black Sea Fleet, one of which was also hit by Ukraine and damaged, likely beyond worth saving. And that's about it, besides some other smaller landing craft, missile and patrol boats, etc. No large surface vessels after the loss of that Slava-class cruiser to a Ukrainian attack, which brings up another point. The Black Sea is not a very large space when considering Ukraine's arsenal of land-based anti-ship missiles, so this really restricts where Russian ships can safely operate. Ukrainian naval drones have also further limited that area to the point that most ships just stay in port, and even then it's shown that they're not safe there. So their Black Sea Fleet is really limited in capability. Pretty much just those 10 caliber carrying vessels, for a total of 60 caliber missiles. Russia's Northern Fleet is the most powerful and largest in terms of large surface vessels. This is the fleet that would, at least attempt, to take on the US and NATO in the Atlantic, which makes it incredibly interesting. Currently, the main major vessel is their sole aircraft carrier, the Admiral Kuznetsov. It, however, isn't in active service after just an incredible series of accidents. The ship had many problems, but the most recent series of events began in 2018 when the floating dry dock it was in sank, and it was heavily damaged after a 70-ton crane fell on top of it. And that floating dry dock was the only dry dock large enough to hold the Kuznetsov for repairs. It was then towed upriver to make repairs that they could while they built a new dry dock. Then, in 2019, a massive fire broke out that killed 2 people and injured dozens more. Then, a storm in 2021 caused more damage, further delaying its return to service. Finally, the new dry dock was complete and they brought it in for repairs. 7 months later, yet another fire broke out, causing more damage to the ship. Repairs in dry dock were finally complete and the ship left in late February 2023. It's currently still docked, but in the water, just north for further repairs, and it won't be expected to return to service until later next year. Another massive, popular ship is the Kirov-class Peter the Great. It's nuclear-powered, giving it virtually unlimited range, and by far the largest warship today, not counting aircraft carriers or amphibious assault ships. But it's also stated it will be decommissioned soon. That is, once another Kirov-class ship, the Admiral Nakhimov, finishes its overhaul. The Nakhimov, which has been being overhauled and modernized for 15 years now, is stated to be able to carry newer weapons, like several dozen calibers and possibly even the hypersonic Zircon missiles. Beyond those, the Northern Fleet has 1 Slava-class cruiser and 6 other destroyers, again all of which are old Soviet-era ships, although some have been upgraded. Also 2 newer caliber-carrying frigates. That's it though for major surface ships. Not much compared to the old, mighty Soviet Northern Fleet that could have put up a fight against the US Navy in the Atlantic and the Arctic regions. There's also several smaller, and therefore limited in range corvettes, patrol boats, etc. But one big capability that Russia and the Soviet Union were known for is their submarine fleet. The Northern Fleet has 26 in total, 8 of which are the nuclear-armed ballistic missile submarines. Then, second to the Northern Fleet in terms of size is the Pacific Fleet. It also has several submarines, 17 total, 3 of which are those ballistic missile subs, also a Slava-class cruiser and 5 destroyers, and again, all old Soviet vessels. Then again, they also have a mix of smaller corvettes and others. But again, it's a fraction of the size and capability that it once had. Their last fleet is the Baltic Fleet, just 1 destroyer here, and it's currently undergoing repairs. Also, 2 Soviet-era designed frigates and 1 submarine, as well as other smaller ships. And their task has only gotten harder with Finland and soon Sweden joining NATO. In any potential conflict, they are essentially blocked in and stuck in St. Petersburg. Then, finally, the Caspian Flotilla, the smallest of them all. It's virtually completely landlocked and not bordering any NATO nations, so it's almost not worth mentioning. However, Russia has launched caliber missiles from ships in the Caspian to hit targets in Syria in 2015, so it does have some capability. But, all in all, Russia's navy doesn't really pose any major threat to NATO anymore. They still have some real capable, long-range, supersonic anti-ship missiles, but as time goes on, fewer and fewer of them remain in service. All attempts by Russia to build new, large warships, like the Leader-class destroyers and several new aircraft carrier designs, have all failed. And in Ukraine, their navy right now is really only good for a few missile launching platforms.